Edi Rama's role in the region?
Edi Rama, he's a man of George Soros. He's a good friend of George Soros. He was brought to power in Albania by Soros, and his family is a byproduct of the Soros Foundation. After coming of Trump to power, Edi Rama, who was afraid from Trump probably overthrowing his government, he did the best that he could to appease the Trump administration. So Edi Rama has done and does anything that the Americans ask him to. He is not an Albanian patriot, even though he has very good relations with the Turkish government for strategical reasons, because Albania is isolated here in the Balkans, and the only country who seriously supports Albania is Turkey. But at the end of the day, for major geostrategical reasons, he asks the Americans first. So anything what the Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama, does, he does on orders from the U.S. Embassy. Because here in Albania, we are not an independent country like Turkey have. In Albania, the ultimate authority is the unelected U.S. Embassy in Tirana. So the U.S. ambassador serves here as a supreme leader of the country. So whatever the U.S. ambassador says, they do. And Edi Rama, whose government has many corrupt politicians and ministers and others, is afraid of having the fate of Hashim Thaçi, who has gone to jail. And in order to save himself from jail, he does everything that the Americans does. So when it comes to the foreign policy, Albania does not have an independent foreign policy. Only free space that Albania has on its foreign politics is somehow its limited economic cooperation with Turkey. But even this one is under a lot of scrutiny from the Americans. But when it comes to the policies of the Muslim world, our government takes orders from the Americans and Israelis, and they decide what should Albania do. Of course, the European Union has some influence. The Chancellor Angela Merkel had a lot of influence in Albania until a few years ago, when she was really disappointed with what the government of Edi Rama does. But now are the Americans who decide everything. So as I was mentioning you before, the coming of Biden is good news for us in the Balkans, because at least Biden seems a bit more polite, more well-mannered than the brutal regime of Donald Trump.
The Prime Minister Edi Rama blamed some EU countries for Albania's possible failure to start EU talks. So do you think that Albania is ready for the membership of the European Union? And do you believe that Albania still has a lot of work to do in order to become part of the EU?
Our Prime Minister blames European governments, but as a matter of fact, I think that the Europeans, they are right. Albania is a very corrupt country. Our top politicians are connected with the organized mafia. We had an interior minister who is charged of organizing massive drug smuggling towards the European Union. Albania, by hosting ex-terrorist organizations like the Mujahideen al-Haq, who are 7,000 here, is a big security threat for the European Union. So I think that the Albanian government itself doesn't want to integrate itself into the EU, because by integrating into the EU, then there will be many responsibilities in front of our government before the European Union. So there is a kind of love and hate relationship between our government and the EU. When the government of Edi Rama came to power in 2015, the relations were very good, especially with Germany. There were high hopes from Germany and the European Union that Albania will soon join. But Albania is not ready. Edi Rama, time after time, threatens the European Union with the threat of Turkey. They tell them that, okay, if you don't take us, we will join Turkey. But these are simply empty blackmails that they do. But after all, responsible for what happens in Albania are the Americans, American embassy. They have total control over Albania today. Today, Albania is like Haiti or the Dominican Republic, or like Iran in time of Mossadegh, where Americans had huge say over what happens in this country. So this is another reason why many European governments are upset with Albania. They do not see us as an independent East European country. They see us mostly as puppets of the Americans, but they do not dare to speak against them. And this is the status quo which exists, and I believe that it will continue like this for a long time.
Lastly and shortly, I would like to hear your words about the Uyghur problem, because I know you visited the concentration camps and you have become very famous after that across the world. So that's why I would like to hear your words. What do you expect from US, Turkey, and the other countries?
Unfortunately, there is very little thing that Turkey can do to save Uyghurs, because China is a superpower and Turkey is a second world power, and it is too far from the border of China, and the possibilities of Turkey to save the Uyghurs are very minimal. Now, there are many accusations, especially in the West, and in very often by some evangelical Christians who manipulate the Uyghurs, who try to blame Turkey for not helping Uyghurs enough. I think Turkey is one of the countries that does and has done for the Uyghurs more than any other country has done in the world. Turkey has hosted many Uyghurs. Most of Uyghur diaspora lives in Turkey. But coming back to what the United States can do to save the Uyghurs in China, the problem is that China today is probably the most powerful country in our planet, even more powerful than the United States. I visited in August 2019 the detention centers of Uyghurs invited by the Chinese government, and I saw how the Chinese are mass assimilating and destroying the Turkic Muslims of Xinjiang. I mean, the poor Uyghurs have been so much overwhelmed by the Chinese occupation that they cannot do anything about it. The Americans, especially during the Trump administration, they propagated a lot about the Uyghur issue. But in my opinion, the propaganda of the Trump administration was used for political purposes by the Americans for their own political ends to blackmail the Chinese, but not to resolve the Uyghur issue. So my dim conclusion is that the Uyghur issue is a very desperate issue. It is a major genocide that China is doing against its Turkic Muslims. But unfortunately, for the time being, I don't see any power in the world that can do anything to save them. The only thing that can save the Uyghurs is if the world, especially the Muslim countries, get united and they demand from China to tolerate the existence of the Turkic Muslims and Islam in China. But as things stand now, with the total isolation, mass detention centers, state propaganda against Islam, destruction of mosques, the forceful assimilation of Uyghurs into Han Chinese, and moreover the economical and military superiority of China over the rest of the world, make the situation of Uyghurs very, very fragile and very difficult to be solved.
Dear Dr. Jazexhi, thank you very much for this very fruitful conversation. I'm really thank you for this.
You are welcome.
Dear BalkanPod listeners, see you next week, same day, same time.